I'm Tanya Suttles, and I'm one of our financial aid counselors here at Spartanburg Community College. So I'm going to talk with y'all about the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. Let me share my screen so that you can see a slideshow. And while we go through this show, I'll actually be doing a demonstration FAFSA for you. All right, so today we'll talk about the FAFSA, the what, when, wheres, and whys, the information that's needed, the federal student aid ID. We'll do the demo, and we'll discuss during the demo the IRS data retrieval tool, processing timeline for what happens after you complete the FAFSA. We'll talk about some tips and mistakes, what happens if you need to make a correction or you're selected for a process called verification. If you have a special circumstance, what to do, and where you can get help completing the FAFSA. So, each year in October, on October 1st, the free application for federal student aid for the next academic year becomes available. So right now, when you log in to the FAFSA website, you'll actually have the option to do two separate FAFSAs. So that's going to depend on when you're starting school and what terms you plan to enroll, and we'll discuss which one to do a little later. You'll do the FAFSA entirely online or through the mobile app. You can access the site through fafsa.gov or through the studentaid.gov website. Or if you have an Android or iPhone, you can get the My Student Aid app and complete the FAFSA entirely online. We encourage all students to do the FAFSA. It's your first step for any type of federal financial aid, but it's also the first step for some types of state aid. Lottery tuition assistance, for example, requires that you complete the FAFSA, even though it is not a need-based program. And then our institutional scholarships also require completion of the FAFSA. So who completes the FAFSA? This is going to depend on whether or not you're an independent student or a dependent student. Your dependency status is determined by questions on the FAFSA form. It's these 10 questions here. If you're over 24, if you're married, if you're working on a master's or doctoral program, you have children that you provide more than half the financial support for, or dependents that you provide more than half the financial support for, you're currently serving in the U.S. Army on active duty, or are a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces. Since turning 13, you are orphaned, a ward of the court, emancipated, or in legal guardianship, or if you're an unaccompanied youth or a homeless, self-supporting, at risk of being homeless youth as determined by your high school liaison. That's generally going to be someone in your high school guidance department. If you're able to answer yes to any of these questions, then you're considered an independent student, and it's only going to be your tax information, and if you're married, your spouse's tax information that's reported on the FAFSA. If you're not able to answer yes to any of these questions, then it's going to be your information and a parent's information, or both parents' information, depending on your family's situation. So if you're unable to answer yes to any of those questions and you're a dependent, then you'll need to decide which parent is going to be filling out the FAFSA form with you. And this little flow chart will help you through that process. If your parents are married, then both parents will go on the FAFSA. If your parents are not married, but they live together, then both parents' tax information and W-2 information will be reported. If your biological parents do not live together, then you would select the parent that you lived with the most over the tax year, or your custodial parent. If that parent has remarried, then you would also use the step parent's information. If you didn't live with either parent more than the other, you would report the parent that provided the more financial support for you during the year. And if that parent's married, the step parent's information would also be reported. Individuals who are not parents for the FAFSA would be a widowed step parent, your grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, brothers or sisters, or aunts or uncles. Only biological or adopted parents should be reported on the FAFSA form. What will you need to complete the FAFSA? You'll need your social security number, If you're a permanent resident, your alien registration number, 2018 tax return documents if you're filing for the current academic year, or 2019 tax return documents if you're filing for next year. You'll need records of any untaxed income. You'll need an idea of your cash, savings, and checking balances, and you'll need to know the value of your investments other than your home. If you're starting school this spring, you'll need to complete the 2021 FAFSA form, and you'll use 2018's tax information. On the screen here, you see a sample W-2 form. What's highlighted in red is what would be used when completing the FAFSA. This is a sample of a 2018 federal tax return. In this situation, the sample would be the parent of a student. So you see the parent's signatures, and then the highlighted fields are what we look at when completing the FAFSA form. Schedules 1, 2, and 3 of the tax return are also used. In our sample student situation, parents had a Schedule 1, but they do not have a Schedule 2 or 3. This is what the forms would look like. If you're completing the FAFSA for the 2001-2002 academic year, and I apologize for the typo here, you would use 2019's tax information. And this should have said covers fall 21, spring, summer 22. So this will be for next year. Next year being August 2021 through July 2022. And you'll need 1920 W-2 forms and the 1920 tax return. The 1920 federal tax return form does look slightly different than the 2018 return. So here I have highlighted the fields that we would be looking for when completing the FAFSA form for the 21-22 academic year. And then the schedules and what areas are looked at. Right. So once you've gathered all your information, your next step for completing the free application for federal student aid would be creating a federal student aid ID if you don't have one already. And you'll do this online at fsaid.gov. If you've never created one before, you'll just click the Create ID tab and make up your username and password. On the next screen, you would enter your personal demographic information. You're going to enter your social, your date of birth, your name, and address. Your social security number will be attached to this FSA ID, and it will be the ID, username, and password that you use for all financial aid documents through the U.S. Department of Education, including if you decide to take federal student loans, you would use that same username and password to do your counseling for loans and to complete a master promissory note. It is important to note that if you are a dependent student, the student and the parent must both have their own unique FSA ID. Since the ID is connected to your social, it will not allow you to create a second one. So in the event that you don't remember doing an FSA ID and you try to make a new one, it'll error out, let you know that there's already an ID associated with your social if you've created one before. And you can reset the username or password with the Manage My FSA ID tool. Student and parents should use separate email addresses and separate phone numbers when creating their individual FSA IDs. And you'll want to keep that username and password accessible for future years. I recommend saving it with your tax documents. All right, so now we're going to move on into the FAFSA demo. When you complete the FAFSA yourself online, you'll make sure that you're on the studentaid.gov site or on the fafsa.gov site. You want to make sure it's got that .gov at the end. The FAFSA should be free. If you're on a .com or .org, you may be charged for completing the application. If you're on the .gov, you're not going to be charged anything, and your information will be secure. Right. When you open up the FAFSA form, it's going to bring you to a login screen. For our demonstration today, I'm using a demo student from the U.S. Department of Education, and his name is going to be Larry last name. So you've logged in. We're going, for purposes of this exercise, I'm going to be Larry last name. So I'm Larry last name, the student. I've already created my username and password. Once you've created your FSA username and password, if you've verified your email and mobile number, you can log in with any of those three options, your ID, the email, or the mobile number. Today we'll be using Larry's ID. Larry's password. All right. This first screen is going to be a disclaimer. You're certifying by accepting these terms that you are indeed Larry last name or yourself, and that you are not doing this application fraudulently. Once you get in, you'll see that there are two applications available. If you're starting classes in the spring 2021 or in summer 2021 and plan to also attend next fall, you would want to do both applications. If you're starting next fall and only planning to attend fall 2021, spring or summer 2022, then you would only need to do the 21-22 FAFSA form. We're, for the exercise, are going to do next year's, the 21-22 FAFSA form. For this form, you would use 2019's tax information and W-2s. Right. This first screen is just going to be a save key. It's like a one-time password. You would only use this or reuse this in the event that you weren't able to complete the application. Saying you got started, but then you realized you were missing a form. You would save out of the document, and when you re-enter, it'll ask for the save key. The next screen is going to be the directions. So you'll read through the instructions. It'll give you an idea of what documents are needed. It'll discuss privacy, what to do if you are unable to finish all at once. So you'll just hit next, and then it's going to be demographics. Again, Larry last name is a fake student, so this information is not anyone's real information. You would want to enter your middle initial if it did not transfer from your FSA ID. And you'll hit next. And you'll enter your phone number if it doesn't transfer from your FSA ID. And of course, that's not a real phone number either. All right. And Larry's address pulled over from his FSA ID. So Larry would just check to make sure that nothing had changed since he completed the FSA ID. And then you would answer whether or not you've lived in your state for more than 5 years. If you've not, then you'll answer some other questions. Larry has. The next question is going to be citizenship. If you're a U.S. citizen, you just mark yes, I'm a U.S. citizen. If you're a permanent resident or other eligible non-citizen, you'll mark no, and then you'll enter your alien registration number from your permanent residence card. For our exercise, Larry is indeed a U.S. citizen, so we have marked yes. Okay. Larry would confirm his high school completion, so he will be graduating this spring with a high school diploma, and he is coming to do the Associate in Arts Transfer Program. If you're doing a certificate program or diploma, you would select certificate, diploma, less than 2 years. If you're doing a technical program like nursing or mechatronics, you would select Associate's Technical. If you're not coming to us but going on to a four-year college, you would select a bachelor's degree. The next question is asking if Larry has already completed a bachelor's. He has not. And then what his grade level would be. Larry has never attended college before, so he would select never attended. And then if he's interested in working on campus in a work-study job, this just lets the financial aid office know if that's something Larry's interested in. Oops. Sorry about that. Let's see. All right. And then you would hit next to move on through the application. The next will be about gender. And this will be the gender that was assigned at birth. So Larry was assigned male. So it populates a question about selective service. Selective service is the draft. All male citizens or individuals who are assigned male at birth are required to register for selective service at the time they turn 18. So Larry's going to say, yes, go ahead and register me. I'm sorry, he's going to say no because he hasn't registered yet. And then it'll give the option of going ahead and registering. So Larry says, yeah, let's go ahead and get that out of the way. If you have a driver's license, you'll enter your driver's license number and the state of your license in the next screen. If you do not have a driver's license, you'll just hit next to move along. Okay. If you were ever in foster care, you'll say yes. If not, answer no. And then you'll answer your parents' high school or highest grade completed question. You'll assign who's parent 1 and who's parent 2. And if you don't know, it's okay to put other or unknown. Next, you'll report the name of your high school. Since we're here in Spartanburg, South Carolina, we'll just do Spartanburg High School. But you would do the school that you actually are attending and plan to graduate from. And you'll just click search, and then you'll find your school on the list. Do make sure that you select the correct campus. You don't want to accidentally mark that you are graduating from the freshman campus of a high school. You'll hit next, and you'll select the school that you plan to attend. Today, we'll just be doing our college. You'll enter the school code, and that's 003994 for Spartanburg Community College, and you'll select it from the list. Next, you'll select your housing plan. At Spartanburg Community College, we do not have on-campus housing, so you would be selecting with parent or off-campus. Since Larry is from Maryland, he's not going to be living with his parents. They're staying in Maryland, so he's selecting off-campus. I'm going to back up. In the event that you don't know the name of the college you're attending, you can search, or the school code for the college you're attending. You can search for the school code by selecting the school's city, name, and state. And you just click the search field, and you will find the school on the list and select it. You can select up to 10 different colleges. So if you're undecided on where you're going to go to school, you can select, again, up to 10, and only the college that you actually attend will process financial aid for you. You may get an award letter from all the colleges, but again, only the one you attend will process your aid. And then next is going to be dependency questions. Larry has never been married, so he would mark single. Larry does not have any children, and he does not have any dependents, so he answers no. And then he would read over and answer the remaining dependency questions. We went over these at the beginning of the presentation. If any of them apply, say that both of Larry's parents were deceased, he would select this box and hit next. However, in Larry's situation, nothing applies. So he would mark none of the above. And then it asks about the homeless as reported by the high school liaison. That's going to be no for Larry. And it just says that it looks like he's a dependent student and must provide parent information. So Larry will be providing it. In the event that you have a special circumstance where you weren't able to answer yes to any of those dependency questions, but are unable to provide parent information due to, again, a special circumstance such as your parents are incarcerated, or you were in the custody of a grandparent and you don't know where your parents are, you haven't seen them in years, then you would select that you are unable to provide parent information to be able to submit the FAFSA. And the financial aid office will need additional information about your individual situation to determine whether or not parent information should have been provided. All right. For Larry, he doesn't have any special circumstances. He lives at home with his parents, so he marks, I will provide information. All right. So next is going to be parents' marital status. That can be never married, unmarried but living together, married or remarried, divorced or separated, or widowed. Never married can only be selected if the parent has never been married. So the single status would only be if they've never ever been married before. If they've ever been married and are now divorced or separated, they would select the divorced or separated. If they've remarried, they would select married. Larry's parents are married, and then they would enter the month and year parents got married. So for Larry, that's going to be June of 1999. And then you would enter parents' social. And parents' last name as it appears on their social security card. And their first initial. And then their birth date. And parents' email. The email entered here should correspond with the email that your parent used when setting up their FSA username and password. And then parent 2. And parent 2's birthday. All right, and Larry's parents have lived in Maryland for 5 years, so they say yes to this question. Next will be demographic information. So it's already through the process of elimination determined that there are 2 parents in the household and at least 1 student. It's asking if there are any other children in the parent's household that the children provide more than half the financial support for. If there are, you'll enter the number. Otherwise, you'll put 0. And then if there are other individuals in your parent's household that your parents provide more than half of the financial support for, you would report those folks here. And so that could be like an elderly relative or disabled aunt or uncle that your parents provide the financial and physical support for. In Larry's case, it's just the 3 of them. Number of college, for Larry's just going to be him. You would not report your parents in college, just yourself and your siblings would be included in this number. All right. Larry's parents have already completed their tax returns. They did the 1040 return, and they filed a joint return. All right. So when you get to this section, you would want your parent, if at all possible, to use the IRS data retrieval tool. And because I'm not using real data or a real student, that option isn't showing as available here. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation to show you what that would look like. Let me hit save on our application. The IRS data retrieval tool will actually transfer the tax information from your parent's tax return or from your tax return directly to the FAFSA form. The benefits of using this is it speeds up the process. You know that the data elements are correct on the FAFSA. It lowers your chances of being selected for verification or having to do additional review. It also protects your tax information because the numbers will not be visible to your student or even really to yourself when you complete it. All right. So where we were seeing that you are not eligible to complete or use the IRS data retrieval tool on Larry's FAFSA, if your parents are eligible, you'll see link to IRS. You'll click this button and it'll say, hey, it's a really good idea to link to IRS. And you'll say, yes, I want to link. And you'll click the button again. Then you're going to have a little pop-up that notifies you that you're leaving the Federal Student Aid website. You'll click OK to move on to the irs.gov website. So your next screen is going to be a pop-up that looks like this. And you are agreeing that you are using this for legitimate reasons. And you'll click OK. Right. The next screen is going to be the actual IRS data retrieval tool screen. the name and social and date of birth will be pre-populated from the FAFSA form. You'll select your parents' filing status and you'll enter their street address, PO box, as it appeared on their tax return document. It is very picky, so if it's in all caps on the tax return document, just to be safe, enter all caps on the actual form request here. If you have an apartment number, make sure that you report the apartment number if it's as it was reported on the tax return. So if it's in the apartment number box on the tax return, you'll enter it here. If you or your tax preparer included the apartment number as part of the street address, you would enter it here. Once you've filled in all the pertinent information, you'll click submit, and then you'll get a pop-up that lets you know that you were indeed eligible. They found your tax information. So you're not done when you get to this screen. You do have to select this checkbox to say that you want to transfer your tax information. Now, if you get this far and you accidentally cancel out, then it will make you manually enter the tax information on the FAFSA, or you can come back in and try again. So make sure you do check that box. Once you've checked the box, you'll click the Transfer Now button, and it'll take you back to the FAFSA website, and you'll see under all the tax information transferred from IRS. The easiest way to do the IRS data retrieval tool, log into your FAFSA, click the link, enter your tax information, and then submit the transfer button. All right, so now we're going to navigate back to our FAFSA website to finish up our demo for Larry in the event that you are unable to use the IRS data retrieval tool. So if you can't use the data retrieval tool, that's okay. It doesn't always work. When it does work, it just makes things a little easier. So if it didn't work for you, or there's your parents have gotten separated since filing taxes, then you would manually enter. And you'll have a little directions link. So if you read it and you say, I don't know what that adjusted gross income is, I can't find box 8B on the tax return, you can click the little question mark here, and it'll show you exactly where to look on the return. All right. And I'm going to enter the information. This is going to be the wage information. You'll split this between the parents based on the W-2s, and then on Schedule 1, if there was farm income or business income, you would split it between the appropriate parent. Something important to note is you do not want to enter cents. You just round up to the nearest dollar amount. So let's say that Larry's dad made $59,357.82. If he entered the cents, it would look like he actually made $5 million. We don't. So in that example, he would have just rounded up to $59,358. That's not what's on the example for Larry. For Larry, his parents both made $60,000, so that's what we'll use there. Then for the tax information, you'll get that from line 14 of the tax return. Again, this is what that will look like. If it's 0 here, then you would just enter 0. If there's amount here, you would also look at Schedule 2 to see if there's an amount on line 2. If so, you would subtract the line 2 amount from the line 14 amount. You'll read through the additional financial information and answer the questions as they go. And again, the tax data will give you directions on exactly where to look to get that information. All right. So this is asking about child support paid by parents. If either of your parents paid child support in 2019, you would report the information here. Cooperative work education program, that would be work through a college but not a work study job. If your parents had that, they would report it here. And then if your parents were working in a work study position, they would enter that information on this line. The next is going to be child support received, you would put the total amount received by your parents during that year. Housing clergy allowance, this would be military or clergy, but non-based housing. And then this is going to look back at the W-2s. On the W-2s, you'll check box 12 to see if there were any pension payments. If on box 12 you have a D, E, F, G, H, or S status, you'll include the amount here. And again, remember not to use the cents. You'll round up to the nearest dollar. If your parents receive veterans non-educational benefits, you'll report the amounts here. If your parents are receiving other untaxed income, such as workers' comp or disability through their employer, you would report the amount here. So something to remember when completing this is Social Security benefits and SSI benefits are not reported in this section. All right. And then it'll ask about parents' cash asset information. So it's asking if parents' assets exceed $9,300. This will vary. It may just ask if you want to answer questions. We're going to say, for the purpose of seeing the next questions, that yes, they do. So then your parent would answer what their cash savings checking account balances are. So this would be money on hand. And for Larry's parents, they had $10,000. Now, the next question is about investments. This would be stock or real estate other than your home. For example, if you have a rental property you own or a beach house or something like that, you would include the value. The next question would be if your parents own a business with more than 100 employees or an investment farm, they would put the value of that business or investment farm. All right, and then next will be students' financial information. Larry's done his FAFSA. And he filed as single, or he did his taxes and he filed as single. He won't be eligible for the data retrieval tool because he's not a real person. We'll use the tax information the Department of Ed provided for us. And his AGI, and you're looking at the same boxes you would have looked at for parents. His income from work, his taxes paid, and then it's going to go through the same list of questions that you saw for parents. You do want to make sure that you don't accidentally report your parents' information as your own information. The FAFSA website is not going to automatically know that you double reported the income. They're just going to be like, oh, cool, you and your parents both made $35,000. That's great. Again, when you're doing the investment question, you do not include the home you live in. All right. So I ran into a problem when testing this last night at the same area. So to show you what the end of the FAFSA looks like, we're going to go back to the slideshow. And I'm going to skip ahead. So after entering the tax information, the next screen is going to ask about a preparer. A preparer is going to be if you're paying someone to do the FAFSA application for you. Just know that any financial aid office at any college will help you do the FAFSA for free. So don't pay someone to do it. We're here to help you with this process. So we'll click no. And then you'll see the information reported on the FAFSA. So everything that you entered on the FAFSA, you can glance over. If you were successful with the IRS data retrieval tool, instead of showing the actual numbers, it'll just say IRS data transferred. So once you get to the end, you'll hit next. And then you'll sign the FAFSA form using your FSA ID. So you'll sign it. You'll read over the terms and conditions of the FAFSA, which are that you will use your federal financial aid to help cover the cost of your education. You're certifying that you do not owe a Pell Grant overpayment or a defaulted student loan, and if so, you made arrangements to repay that overpayment or that default. And that you'll notify the college in the event that you default, and that you'll only receive Pell Grant from one college at a time. And you'll sign, and then you'll get your parent to sign. you'll have to select which parent will be signing the FAFSA form. So whichever parent created the FSA ID will be the one that you use. So you'll click sign as, they'll enter their FSA username and password, they'll read over the terms and conditions, and then agree and hit next. And this is what it would look like. In the event that your parent is unable to sign with their FSA ID, you can print a signature page and mail it to the U.S. Department of Education. It will delay the processing of your FAFSA form by a few weeks, but that is an option in the event that they were unsuccessful with creating the FSA ID or are having some other issue with the FSA ID. So for our example, Larry's parents were both able, or Larry's parent was able to sign and Larry was able to sign. So now we have a confirmation page. The confirmation page gives estimated information. So an estimated EFC, that's going to be the number that's used to determine your eligibility for need-based aid, like the Pell Grant or the South Carolina Need-Based Grant, or subsidized student loans. It'll also give you a data release number. You'll want to keep this number in the event that your college doesn't receive your FAFSA form for some reason, and will ask for that number. So now that you've submitted the FAFSA, what's next? Well, you've submitted it. The results will be processed by the U.S. Department of Education, and you will receive either by mail or by email a student aid report. This is a copy of your FAFSA data. Please review it once you receive it. If corrections are necessary, you can log back in to FAFSA on the web and make any appropriate changes. Or you can update the student aid report and mail it back to the U.S. Department of Education to make changes. Or you can request that the financial aid office make any changes that are necessary by submitting documents. Once the school has received the results, we'll either move along to awarding, or if you were selected for verification, we'll ask for additional information. Approximately 30% of all students are selected for verification. It doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It's just luck of the draw. You got a little extra work. It's like an audit. So if you use the data retrieval tool, in most cases, we wouldn't need tax information. It would just be filling out a form, maybe providing a photo ID or a copy of your registration for selective service, or it could be just confirming the number of people in your household. If it happens, don't stress. It's just a little bit of extra work. Your financial aid office can help you through the process and move you along to getting your award offer. In the event that you did have a special circumstance where you weren't able to provide parent information, or there has been a change in your parent's situation or in your individual situation, if you're an independent student, say in 2019, you filed your taxes with your spouse, but you've now separated or divorced, you would want to come to the financial aid office to discuss that situation so that we can look at potentially removing the ex-spouse's information from the FAFSA, or at looking at 2020's income in the event that you've lost a job or your parents lost their job this year. So if you have a special circumstance, you'll bring that to the financial aid office, and we'll lead you in the right direction and get you the right forms and let you know what we need. So once everything's been processed and your FAFSA is completed, we've done all the verification, any special circumstances have been addressed, your next step is going to be your award offer. For our college, you're going to find that on your student portal. So you'll log into your portal, you'll select self-service and then student financial aid. You'll make sure that you're reviewing the correct award year, and you'll have a financial aid checklist. Our example student here was selected for verification, so he's not all the way through the list. He needs to complete some additional documents for verification before he moves on. Once he's provided those documents, his checklist will move down to being reviewed. Once his FAFSA has been reviewed and he's been awarded aid, the next two will open up on his checklist. So now that you have aid, an award letter, you want to keep your aid. So I wanted to briefly go over satisfactory academic progress. The Department of Education requires that colleges track the progress of their students for eligibility for aid. And we look at 3 standards: cumulative GPA. For federal aid, you need a cumulative GPA of 2.0 or higher. A progression rate of 67% or higher. That is the number of credits successfully completed divided by the number of credits you have attempted. And then the third component is maximum time frame. Once a student has attempted 150% of the credit hours allowed in the program of study, they are no longer eligible for federal aid. So if you are in an associate in arts degree, it requires 60 credits to graduate. The Department of Education says you should have the ability to graduate with those 60 credits within 90 credit hours. So if you reach 90 credit hours and you haven't earned all 60 credit hours that you needed to graduate, then you would have to appeal to keep financial aid. You would be on a suspended status unless an appeal was approved. All right. So if you need help doing the FAFSA or you have questions about the FAFSA, we're here to help you. We're in the office Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. and on Fridays, 8 a.m. until 1:30. We can help you complete that process at the computers here in the financial aid office. If you're a dependent student, we do ask that along with your information that you also bring your parent and your parent bring their tax information as well, so we can get everything done for you all at once.